was nice to see the speeds this morning, and but I maybe qualifying will get back to there, maybe. But for the most part, it'll continue to slow down from here. But there's good feedback from the drivers.
And John, also in your capacity, you interact with all the drivers and crew chiefs. But what are some of the things you're hearing throughout the garage from this morning's test?
Well, a lot like Pocono, whenever we come to a new facility or a repave, which essentially is the same thing, we're probably working on a different agenda and looking at things that are technically correct, verifying that the gear ratio is correct and nobody's adding any additional strains outside of our targets for RPM on the engines and things like that. A lot of it is making sure that everything is okay for Sunday's race, and in that arena or that department, so far everything's got green lights. RPMs are about where they were calculated to, which will help the teams negotiate through 400 miles on Sunday. Cooling issues are non-existent, things of that nature. So that's kind of from the technical side what we spend a lot of time on when we do come to a test for the first time after a racetrack has got a little bit of a facelift. So.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll take a few questions now. I'm sure there may be a few. We've got Claire B. We'll start off with her, and then we'll go to Bob Pockers.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. We've been talking to all the drivers that came in about speed. The fact that speed doesn't always mean that it's a great race just because they're going fast. Sometimes that holds that up. Greg Biffle said, yes, we want to entertain. We don't want to kill anybody. He actually used that word, yes. And so what is your philosophy on speed, and when it's too much, or, what's your perspective on it?
You have to, you have to get an overall picture of things, and it's, we go to a lot of facilities that can generate some speed, and we're just a little bit faster than where we were at that 15 years ago at Atlanta, when the pole speed was at 197 or something like that. So, racetracks like here in California have a tendency at times to be pretty fast. But these are good race cars, and we work real hard on the package. But we also know that this is the optimum day. This morning was, and and time will take care of all of that. And so we're not concerned right now with that, and we know that things will kind of calm down a little bit.
The 201 at Bristol, Claire, might get us a little excited. Yeah.
Now with only 2 grooves, so.
Bob Pockers.
Bob Pockers, Sporting News. So what I gather is that you're not considering putting plates on the cars at all. Is that correct?
I didn't hear you.
You're not considering putting plates on the cars at all?
I mean, in everybody, as everybody knows, we have equipment with us everywhere we go, every race we go, year after year after year. But no, we're not looking for plates here.
And can you kind of explain just a little further why speeds will drop the rest of the weekend?
Temperature, rubber in the racetrack, and unlike other places where you get to run together, sometimes the speeds get up because of drafting and things like that. That typically doesn't help a cup car run any faster when you get 43 cars on the track. There'll be some that will maybe pick up some speed, but in general, the speed will continue to go down.
David?
Yeah, David Newton, ESPN.com. A lot of the drivers said they had a comfort factor out there. They didn't feel uncomfortable in the car going those speeds, but Biffle said that he thought it was getting close to maybe dangerous speeds. I mean, is there a number you guys are looking for? Do you feel like it is getting close to that?
I don't know if you can put a number on it. I think you answered your own question when you said the drivers you've talked to are very comfortable in their race cars. I don't know if anybody can really define too fast. You know what I mean? If the drivers are comfortable, right, and the racetrack is doing its job and the tire is doing its job, then I think we're okay. Traditionally, as Robin said, the short runs, the qualifying runs, so on and so forth, will usually generate a much faster speed than what we race at. Even at Daytona, when we practice at 201, right? And you look at the speeds throughout the race, and they're 10 miles an hour slower. It's just when you get 43 guys out there together, they need a little more room, and that giving each other a little bit more room ultimately slows them down. So
Yeah, a few of the drivers that I've talked to, I mean, they said it's not, they don't feel the sensation that it's any faster. You know, they lift at the same spot on the racetrack that they lifted for the last 20 years, and you get in the gas a little bit sooner. It feels good to them. There's a lot of grip there, and they feel like they're in control. So, you know, it looks to me like overall aero package, tire package, and the grip level of the racetrack is working like it should.
Nate has a question, and then it looks like Claire's on the verge of having another one. Looks like she's got another question. Go ahead.
Hey, Ryan, USA Today. I'm looking back at what you guys said during the Daytona test when you guys were talking about like what speeds were too fast then. I think it was like 203, 204 was where you, above that was where maybe there was concern, not from the driver's perspective, from the NASCAR perspective of when you start worrying about liftoff. Is there a number here that you would worry about, a liftoff speed or speed you'd be uncomfortable with in terms of cars getting up?
yes, there is, and no, we're not there yet. So
Yeah. I mean, when you look at Daytonas and Talladegas, those are pretty sustained speeds. You know, I mean, when you run a lap at a 203, you're low of 202 and high at 204 on the track. And here, when you run a 200, you may be a 215 somewhere, but you're 180 somewhere else. So, you know, when the speeds go up and down, you know, to get that average. So, you know, we're still feel pretty good.
Go ahead, Claire.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. Again, I know you said that the speeds are going to go down. A couple of the drivers were talking about how following up from my previous question, that it doesn't always make great racing if the speeds are too fast. Where is that perspective in it?
That's drivers put on great races and teams put on great races, and you know, not every place always puts on a great race, and I mean, it moves around. That's why we've got 22 or 3 different racetracks that we run at, different configurations. And I don't know how you can predict that after 3 hours of practice of a new pave with cars that are instrumented up and things like that. So, you know, I mean, we're here to put on good races, and we'll, you know, you can't script it, you know, as much as you think you'd like to, but you don't.
Other questions? Reed, and then back to David.
Reed Spencer with NASCAR Wire Service. A number of drivers still are befuddled somewhat about the speeding penalties at Pocono. I'm just curious as to whether NASCAR looked at anything after the race there, and whether there's any reason to, whether there will be any adjustments made before the next time they go back.
yes, we have, and I'm sure they will. They'll slow down next time.
Yeah. I mean, we'll go back, and you know, just like teams, I'm sure, went back and said, "Are we sure we did the right thing?" We'll go back and we'll look at the equipment and things. You know, all of our inputs were correct, dimensions were correct, but you know, we go out of our way to not penalize, contrary to popular belief. So, you know, we'll go back and make sure that that for some strange reason but something was wrong. But we haven't seen that. We looked at it all with all of our backup systems during the event. We never saw any of that. And so, but you know, we'll go back just like they did, because we want to make sure that everybody's okay.
And the important thing to remember is nobody is issued a penalty until they're in excess of 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. You know what I mean? So there's still a very wide operating range for the drivers to operate in every place we go. When red lights come on, they come on for a reason, and it's typically because they're too fast.
David, you have a question?
Yeah, that one, but I can make up another one here.
Quickly, you're on the clock.
Well, following that line of question, Jimmy was talking about, maybe one day there'll be a where you have real time, or you guys can, have monitors up there so they know what's happened and tell them exactly where they went wrong. Well, is there a point where you're going to get to there? Or,
We tell them. I mean, when John calls out the penalty, they tell him where they're wrong. Immediately, if you have the opportunity to listen to race control or scan it when they talk, I mean, they'll say such and such car, 61 miles an hour, zone 2. It comes out over the radio immediately, or during that lap of caution. So I don't know what he's getting at, but we tell him, we have been, and way back when, even John, until it got to be where so many people would call and ask, even when they didn't speed, a team would call up and say, what do my pit road speeds look like? And the series director on Channel 2 would say, 57 something, 58, whatever it was, and if it was 10 sections, he'd read them all off to them and make sure they're okay. That's been going on since the electronic pit road speeds. That's not anything new. We go out of our way to give them information.
A big thing to remember about live instant speed, right, is if that day ever comes, then there is zero forgiveness factor for every competitor up and down pit road. Right now, the way pit road speed is measured is it's time over distance. So if you slip with your foot for a second or something like that, the drivers today have the ability to go fast for that long and slow for that long to still be okay. If the day ever comes where it's instant live speed, right, that all goes away. It is what it is at that point.
Yeah, and there's been times that a driver will get it in the wrong gear down pit road, one way or the other, and they've caught themselves and went overboard to adjust one way or the other. So I mean, all of these precautions are put into play to give enough leeway where they don't speed. So when they do, it's because they're trying to have a competitive advantage over one of their competitors. Very similar to what we had to do with Bristol last year. It's fine. We operated with the same number of loops for quite a few years in there. And then once that system got to be abused, we had to go in and we had to add, for the safety of the folks on pit road, we had to go in and add the loops. But for a long time, it was just fine.
Let's go to Nate. I think Nate
Okay,
had
go ahead,
one
Nate.
first, Claire, and then we'll go
Yeah,
Nate
go
and then
ahead.
back to you.
Yeah, just to finish off the pit road thing. First of all, Jimmy was in favor of keeping time over distance for exactly what you said,
Yeah.
Tommy. He knows that's a good thing. But one suggestion he had, maybe you guys can tell us if it makes sense, is when you guys change the zones like you did at Pocono, like maybe you could allow them to test it and practice it, like test sectors and practice that. Just throwing it out there. This was his suggestion. I don't know if that's feasible or not.
This is very real, and this is something that nobody can argue, okay? The pit road speed rule is exactly the same at every single racetrack. It's from yellow line to yellow line, okay? It doesn't matter if there's one segment, 2, 50, or 100. It doesn't matter. The speed rule is from yellow line to yellow line.